Good Mental Health, a regular podcast series that helps you make sense of the world around you in order to lead a more optimal life. We do that by examining the teachings of Dr. Neil Marinello. He's a behavior expert and solutions focused life coach in Woodstock, Vermont, with near 6 decades exploring the human condition. He's been tweeting for a number of years now, and we examine his tweets in this podcast series. And as always, I'm pleased to be joined by the good doctor. Neil, it's always a pleasure seeing you on the show here. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure also, Matt.
Our topic for today is just such a natural progression from where we began this podcast series. And if you recall, to the viewer out there, we began with the 10 rules for life, if you will, sort of a basis for the reality around you. And we've now morphed into a sort of a second chapter, if you will, of the Good Doctor's tweets, where we're really examining where perception informs thinking, which determines reality. Perception, thinking, and reality. That's sort of the second phase here that we've been speaking with. And our topic today is really a natural progression, again, of where we began this second part of the series, which was what I see is not what's there. There's what's real, what's not real, and what we perceive to be real. And then today's topic is really, again, about meaning. And the meaning anything has is what you give it. And Neil, this is really just, again, another way of saying that how we significate anything determines its impact in our life. Isn't that correct?
Yes. I think that the thing which started me thinking in this direction was a scene from the movie Oh God, in which George Burns is playing God, and he's being tested as to whether he really is God or not. And the question that is asked is, what is the meaning of life? And the answer that is given is the meaning of life is exactly and precisely what you think it is, no more, no less. And I began to do a riff on that and understood that we give meaning to things based on our own projections, based on what comes from within us. And I started thinking in terms of the interactions that I have with people as my reaction to what they say and their reaction to what I say, which may or may not be in concert. So I remember many years ago, we were doing an evaluation of kids coming into kindergarten. And we were using a thing called the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test, in which it gave an age-related score to what a child, how the child answered the questions. And one child answered questions at a 10-year-old level, and that child was 5 years old, which by the old method of determining IQ, which was mental age over chronological age times 100, would have given him a 200 IQ, which is quite extraordinary. And I was quite embarrassed to hear the reaction of the teacher when I showed it to her. I was excited, obviously, and I showed the results. And she said, "Oh, don't worry about it, Neil. We'll have him down to normal in no time."
Oh, goodness.
And I realized that not only had she misunderstood what I was saying, but she had interpreted my excitement as if it was some sort of a major concern about something wrong with the child. And there have been several examples of that I've had since then, of people who choose the interaction to significate, to give meaning to what I'm saying that isn't exactly what I meant to say, and my possibly doing the same thing with what they're saying. So the giving of meaning to something comes from within each of us, and we have to check it out to make sure that we're doing it the right way.
Well, and I love that you started the answer with that analogy of, the Oh God movie. And and in a sense, that's the natural progression, if you will, of this question is, what is the meaning of life? And it really is just that it isn't anything more than that. And I mean that by saying that the meaning of life is what you give it. And that's it. You know, we could even go deeper and deeper and deeper, but that's not what we're talking about here. It's like, it's a very, very simple concept. The meaning of life is what you make it.
And that has to do with the key to happiness. The key to being happy actually has a great deal to do with the way you think about things. And the way you think about things is a variable. It's something that can be changed. It can be changed by interacting with somebody else. It can be changed by interacting with parts of yourself. It can be changed by figuring out how to get your conscious and your subconscious to communicate better. So the truth is that that happiness is directly related to how we significate the experiences we've had, the experiences we're having right now, and the ways in which we anticipate future experiences.
And so this is just beautiful, because it so dovetails with sort of what's been going on for me, in that, you know, for probably the past week, I haven't been feeling great, you know, and I'm very aware of the connection between mind and body. And so I have to be very careful not to talk myself into illness. Right? Because I know that power and things like that. And so it just, again, it's like, it's what I make of it. It's my interpretation, and it has to be for my better health. And so other things that have been happening since we last spoke, I sort of feel have been preparing me for today's discussion. In that I've come upon the Kabbalion, which is the Hermetic teachings of Hermes Trismegistus, you know, which is supposedly the latest incarnation of Thoth, who is the ancient Egyptian deity, and things like that. And it's talking about all, and it was sort of a written encapsulation of what you and I have been spending, you know, the last 14 weeks sharing here. And so it was wonderful to get sort of that external influence as a form of confirmation about what we've been talking about.
So it validated some of the things we've been talking about.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, though. I don't. I'm aware of the Kabbalah.
This is different. This is not the Jewish, text and rituals. This is the Kabbalion, Kybalion, and it was written in 1908. So it's, again, so interesting is that it confirms what we've been talking about here in 2021, but was written over 100 years ago, and which you've just said you're not aware of.
Yes. I mean, some of what I'm saying comes from William James, who actually wrote in the 19th century about the importance of meaning, and how we give meaning to things, and that determines our happiness. And some of it has to do with later works of people who have been psychologists or have studied psychology. When it comes to understanding physical stuff, what's going on with, if I'm in pain in one kind or another, there are a couple of ways of doing that. And one of them was developed by a guy named Adler in the early 1900s. And he had a question, which I have used many times. And when a person reports some sort of a physical symptom, he would say, he would do something like take out a pen and say, okay, now when you want to to understand what's going on with you at this point, take the pen, and let's assume that the pen is somehow a magic wand. And when you want to take the pen and tell me what your wish is that comes to your mind when you take the pen. And then the client takes the pen, and if the client says, my stomach has been hurting, but I wish my wife would be nicer to me, then it's probably got more of a psychological basis. If the client says, my stomach has been hurting and I wish the pain would go away, then it's probably more of a physical basis. Now, the way that I deal with physical problems when I have them is to use a Fritz Perls technique, which is to actually, if I'm feeling pain in my stomach, I become the stomach. And I say, okay, I'm the stomach, and what am I trying to tell you? And then, depending on what it says, I try to get inside the experience of the stomach and project from the stomach to my conscious mind and figure out, is there something I can do right now, as we said before, that'll help you feel even a little bit better about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really interesting because, again, through the work that we've been doing in this series and of course, prior, I'm pretty in touch with what I think I need or feel that I need. And I know what the answer is. Doesn't make that it's any easier to incorporate. And that then also could also be part of the source of the problem, is the awareness that I feel that I'm not necessarily powerless, but that I'm not taking the power to implement a solution that I know would be beneficial.
Yeah, you'll have to be more specific.
Well, so I do have tummy problems right now. And so I know that part of the problem is that I'm overeating or I'm eating poorly, so that my diet needs to improve. But I'm sort of like, well, how do I do that? And in a sense, it's you throw up your hands and I know that I'm not alone in this, because I know you yourself, have issues with food, an example. But again, my awareness that this is part of my problem, and my awareness that I'm not solving this issue, could be, in fact, the gestational start of the discomfort. Does that make sense?
Well, yes and no. The part of it that and the disclaimer here, as I've said before, is that if I have an area that I'm still working on and hopefully will resolve before I reach the age of 90, I'm 77 now, it is with regard to food. I can give you some of the ways that I've dealt with it. One of them is that to understand that what my stomach is telling me is a desire for resolving problems which may or may not be physical. And most of the time they are more emotional.
Right.
I'm a stress eater. Whenever I feel like, gee, I really want something to eat right now, and it's especially something with sugar in it, I assume that I'm experiencing some form of anxiety, that there's something I'm scared of thinking. And what I'll often do is say, okay, I'm going to answer the question, what am I scared to think right now, before I put something in my mouth. What I have come up with, I guess, is the major way in which I resolve my weight issues. And I'm quite sure that if I didn't ask myself this question, I would weigh 400 pounds. It's wait 5 minutes and consider everything that I swallow. If I'm going to swallow something, think about it first and see if in fact it feels right to eat that, or is there something else I can do that might meet the need that the desire to swallow something is coming from.
Well, and again, I just love that we're able to have this discussion because it vicariously allows me to process some of my own issues as well, and as trying to help the viewer out there. And so I know that, as we talk about, my tummy and it's a diet issue, what it really is a loneliness issue, and probably a fear of loneliness, because I experience loneliness a lot, given that I'm single and I don't have a wide circle of friends to whom I can interact with on a daily basis, on a regular basis. So I know that what I need is an intellectual stimulation, but because I don't have a significant companion such as you have with your wife Anne, that
Mhm.
that touch is missing from my life. And I think we certainly know that, the health benefits of physical touch are profound. And so I know that the answer for me is I need to find a massage therapist again. And I'm
Okay.
not doing that, even though I
Mhm.
know that intellectually that would be a solution. And yet for some reason, I'm not uh, taking that to the next level to act on it. What I can say is prior to today's, meeting, half an hour beforehand, as I get present to what our topic is and how it's impacting me, I went and looked online for a local massage therapist. I didn't find one that I want
Right.
to work with, but I certainly found a list. So,
Yeah, that's a start. Yeah, there are several benefits to it. Once you get in touch with the fact that you need touch, then the issue is what you starting with what you did, which is find a list. Don't be afraid to try out various ones. But the most important thing is scheduling an appointment, knowing that you're doing something about it, and then you have the additional factor of anticipation when you feel lonely, and that of course is distinct from feeling alone, because feeling alone does not have associated with it the sadness and emptiness that you're connecting by significating it as lonely. The reality is that you can say to yourself, okay, well, I'm doing something about this. I've got an appointment with so and so on such and such a date, and I know what it is I want, and I'm going to be as clear as I can be about that. And that person will either meet my needs or not. And if not, I go to number two on the list.
right.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's
And,
actually,
and, and I love this, how it does dovetail into the topic here in that, what, so massage, and how do I significate that, you know, and I'm obviously significating it that is a real important part of my mental health and my
Mhm.
physical health. And for somebody else, that doesn't matter anything to them at all, particularly in those two areas. So again, it comes back to an individual power and
Mhm.
responsibility. And I think, many of us certainly know deep down inside, but I can say to my, just in what we've been speaking here today, how I don't consciously act on it. And yet my subconscious probably knows and will manifest it in ways that is going to force me to actually have to address it, which is in this case as a symptom of unwell, of feeling unwell. And
Yes,
that's the way my subconscious is trying to,
your subconscious is clearly telling you that you need this.
yeah.
And there are various ways of getting it at any given point in time. I probably spend more time alone than I do doing anything else. And I am very fortunate in that I have a partner who enjoys cuddling with me when we go to bed. I also have a dog that likes to sit in my lap. And I sometimes refer to the dog as my blanket. It, but when I'm sitting alone and I'm feeling a little scared or a little lonely or something of that sort, I will cocoon myself. I'll sit in my most comfortable chair, and I'll get a blanket and wrap it around myself, put something for my head to rest on, and do everything I can to make myself as comfortable and feel as safe as possible.
Mm.
The Sometimes you have somebody, sometimes you don't. The name of the game is, what can I do right now that'll help me feel better? And it may just be schedule an appointment with somebody.
Yeah.
The beauty of massage therapy is that it's basically a contract, as any form of therapy that is good is. You're basically saying, I will spend X amount of time with somebody whose job it is to help me feel a little better.
Nice. And I think that's actually why I love our interaction, in a sense. I get that opportunity to experience myself in a much more positive way, whether it's through this podcast series or our previous interactions in a doctor-client relationship. Our topic again is the meaning of anything is what you give it. The meaning of life is what you give it. And it's so interesting. I've seen this question been popping up in a lot of my feed on social media, which again is sort of an external validation that what we're talking about is also out there in the zeitgeist. And my meaning for life is completely different than anyone else's because of how I significate it. And I was really triggered by what you just said, that like, if you're feeling unsafe, you'll kind of try to, put a nice blanket around any way to try to cocoon, if you will, as a way to try to make yourself safe. And that made me just think of how I look at the world, in a sense, in that same way that some people may look at life as, a series of unfortunate, disparate, unrelated events that you just have to react to and buckle down and knuckle under to, and that to me is a very frightening way of looking at the world around me, and I choose to actually use your viewpoint a little bit more and to look at it much more softly and welcoming and warming and safe, because again, it goes back to what we were talking in our initial 10. My eyes are creating this reality around me. And for me, I need it to be as rewarding and welcoming and safe and as positive as possible for my well-being and to be able to go out into it.
Yes, a series of events which may or may not be random, but the meaning that you give to those events gives you an opportunity to learn from them. And when you learn from those events in a way that allows you to grow rather than shrivel, you're giving meaning to your life in a way which works for you. And that's all that really matters, is finding a way that works for you. The only caution there is making sure that the way that works for you does not hurt other people. Because if you're looking for ways that work for you, you're basically looking at something that's going to help you. And if you can do that without it being at the expense of others, or even better, as my life is about, helping others. The simple truth is that the best validation a therapist can get is a statement from the client, you've made me a better person. And of course, I don't make anybody anything, but I give data, which hopefully, and experiences, which hopefully help my clients to feel like they're better than they were before talking to me. And if the stories I tell help with that, then I'm doing my job right. If they don't help so much, I'll be happy to see anybody for nothing and talk to them about it.
Yeah. And, and this sort of, really rides into, my recent past here and my brush with death at the, hand of at my own hand and the barrel of a .38 revolver. And how do I significate that going forward in a way to try to be empowering and still live in a world that is safe for me. And I think what we've been doing, since then, the work you and I've been doing, and this podcast series as an example, is just an example of it. That leading up to that event, this was missing, and it came to a head on that night. And since then, been working really hard to, again, reframe my reality in a way that is loving and positive and supportive of me and everyone that my eyes have created and my amygdala interprets.
Yeah, I think that when someone goes through, and I consider it an honor to be able to talk to you after you reached that extreme point. And it's not something that the therapist gets many chances to do, because most people who point to 38 at their heart and pull the trigger do not survive it.
Mm.
The key to getting beyond that is understanding what were the circumstances that led you to that point where you saw no other option. And from my point of view, the most important thing is what was going on in your head, what was going on in your father's head, what led you to believe that that was the only possible option. And you talked about it in some of these podcasts. At the same time, I think that the key to understanding it is to not just find a way to positively connote it, but also to truly understand how bad it was, because you won't get back to that point if you've been there and realize that the place that you reached was one corner of one floor of a big building that was inside you.
And it's so interesting as we talk about, that so many have gone to the dark night of the soul not to return, and yet I have. And I'm really fortunate because I don't know if it was you, but somebody reframed this whole incident in a way that was so empowering for me that really gave me, my life, meaning. And it ties directly in to our conversation here. And that was that they said that it was just that you went to the dark night of the soul. Many have not returned, and the hero story continues. And it was that last line that each of us are living the hero's life every day.
And that is, I don't think whoever told you that, those are not my words. On the other hand, I agree with them. And so I want to, give an add a person to that individual. We each describe to ourselves, we each have an announcer in our head describing to ourselves what's going on. There's something that you yourself said, there was something you were saying to yourself just before you pulled the trigger. And it was something like, the world would be better off without me.
Right.
Everybody will. Now that was a projected distortion, which turned you into an anti-hero, not a hero. It certainly said, I am, there's an assumption that you are evil coming from that. And my experience is that evil, nobody really thinks of themselves as evil. Everybody has a rationalization. Everybody has something they say to themselves to prove that they're not evil. Even Hitler, had something he was saying to himself to believe that what he was doing was good, not bad. Once a person understands that they're saying to themselves, it becomes clear that there's something else they could say to themselves that would turn them into someone who's doing good instead of bad. But nobody goes at it saying, oh, I'm evil, I'm going to do evil stuff because it makes me feel better to do evil stuff. There are TV shows that create that narrative, and I just laugh when I see them and turn it off, because I see that the screenplay writer didn't really understand how the mind works. The way the mind really works is that when the conscious and subconscious are in concert, there is an understanding of the fact that there's no part of you that is evil. There are only parts of you that can push you in the direction of doing something that's evil.
Mm. And I love, because shame is so wrapped up in this, and I know that this is going to be the basis for our third part of this discussion. Again, we're in the second part of the discussion right now, which again is about thoughts, framing, perspective, which informs reality and impacts reality. But we'll get into shame because that's definitely intertwined with this and what you just said as well. Our topic for today's discussion is the meaning anything has is what you give it. And by fiat, the meaning of life is what you give it, nothing more. It's that simple concept. Now you can go back in and say, oh, well, maybe it's this or that or anything. That's even going way too deep. It's just this very simple statement. The meaning of life is what you give it. Done.
And you can change the meaning of life, and you can change the meaning of your life, and you can change your happiness, your understanding of good and evil. You can change all of that just by looking at the process of your thinking and being open to the possibility that it isn't written in stone.
Wonderful. Neil, your final thoughts on our topic. Again, the meaning of life is what you give it. The meaning of anything is what you give it. It just continues on our overall topic throughout the series of your life is how you significate it.
Yeah, I think that the key to any effectiveness that I have is that I'm not afraid of getting in depth. I'm not afraid of going as deep as you need to go to get to the actual inner dialogue that's going on between the parts of yourself, between the parts of myself. And understanding what a person is saying to themselves is the key to that. Bringing the conscious and the subconscious together, with each of them understanding their function, is the key to it. I think of an example. I had a 12-year-old boy referred to me many years ago who was constantly running away from home. His parents clearly had created a good home for him, but he would run away from home. Nobody would know where he went. And he would come back and he would be brought to therapists, and the therapist would ask him questions, and he wouldn't say where he had gone or anything like that, but he would always come back by himself, and he was always a little happier when he came back. And I got to talking to him, and I spent half a dozen sessions with him, and the whole goal of that was to get him to trust me. And when he did trust me, what I found out was that he was running away from home and going to visit his grandfather. His grandfather had, in fact, been alienated from the rest of the family, and he would go to be with his grandfather. His grandfather, when he would have fun together and tell stories, but the one message was, "Don't tell anybody that you came here." So once the issue came out that the grandfather was involved, it became very easy to resolve the problem, meet with the parents, get the grandfather in. But until I figured out what was really going on in his head, what was he saying to himself? How was he positively connoting something that was freaking out his family, bringing the police into looking for him and all kinds of other stuff? Yeah, you had to get past the external appearance of things and inside the kid's mind in order to understand what's really going on. Getting in depth is, to me, always the key to understanding how people significate things and what meaning they're giving to their lives.
Wonderful. We've been speaking with Dr. Neil Marinello, behavior expert, solutions-focused life coach out of Woodstock, Vermont, near 6 decades exploring the human condition. You can follow the good doctor on Twitter at Coach Dr. Neil, and we invite you to join us next time here on Good Mental Health, where our topic will be a continuation of today's No Two People Think Alike. On behalf of the good doctor, I'm Matt Kelly, wishing you good mental health.